I remember bringing in a Jewish member of my personal circle of friends and acquaintances and professional people to join our board to bring that perspective among many other skills that he brought.
I can see me. I'll be the eyes so that I just can be.
This is another episode of a special series called Enough for All of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. This series sheds light on 75 years of an NGO called CWS. My name is Marie Bloem and I welcome you to another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen.
Good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast about Church World Service, and I'm delighted to have an ex-board member of Church World Service, Lenann, who will introduce herself and tell a little bit about what she's doing at the moment, and then we take it from there. Lenann, so great to see you and to have you today.
Great to see you, Maurice. My name is Lenann McGookey Gardner. It's the world's hardest name. And I help people to grow their businesses or to get better jobs. So I've done since the pandemic a lot of work in helping people who were out of work to get jobs and people who had jobs that weren't a great fit to get a job that is a great fit. So that's my work.
Great. And you know, Lenann is one of those people that actually have walked with me during one of my 100-mile campaigns. I'm really grateful, and also hosted me. So we, Lenann and I have a very special bond, and because of that, because when you walk together, a lot of things are, developing as a result of that. Lenann, this is a podcast about Church World Service. Can you please explain to the listeners how you got involved with Church World Service, and when did you hear for the first time about Church World Service?
I heard for the first time when I lived in Baltimore many years ago, and my husband's friend, Tom Hampson, said, "Hey, I'm involved with this organization, Church World Service." I said, "Never heard of it." And he started talking to me about it, and I became a donor. And when I became a donor, I learned so much because of what I got from CWS about the work that they were doing. I was, very excited to support that. At the time, I was just supporting it financially. I wasn't involved in any other way. But Tom decided to recommend me for membership on the board of directors. Well, that's a whole nother level. And so I was interviewed by people on the staff, including the CEO, about whether I might be able to make a contribution to the board. And I did have a chance to come in, and I had 2 full 3-year terms, and then I completed the term of someone who had to leave the board with some time remaining on their term. So it was probably about 7 years serving on the board of directors and getting to work with people like yourself.
Great. And when you started to support Church World Service, what made you do so? What do you like about the work of CWS?
Yeah, I would even use the word love. I love the fact that Church World Service allows me, as we have said before, to walk the talk. It's to do something about things that concern me, but I don't have any other mechanism for doing anything about it other than talking about it. And so with Church World Service, they give me a mechanism to be helpful to people who are less advantaged than I am. And I love that. I love it when they tell me, this donation buys chickens for these people, and then they can, have the chickens lay eggs, and they'll eat the eggs, or they'll sell the eggs, and they'll have a life. So I want to be able to be helpful, but it helps me make it concrete to try to live my faith. I'm a Stephen minister. And what that means is I do a lot of ministry in my community to help people who are hurting. And that's all well and good. But there are many people outside the bounds even of, you know, my city, my state, who do need additional help. And the thing about CWS is that for nearly 75 years, they've been doing this work to help people who are hungry, to help people who are displaced, and they know how to do it. So it's like, I don't know how to do it. I feel bad about it. I don't know how to do it. These people know how to do it. So learned all the lessons that you learn over the course of 75 years of serving. So it's quite remarkable. And that's the hook for me with CWS.
You know, I know actually how you have been involved with CWS, and you were alluding to the board. But can you tell the listeners a little bit about your work within the board? Because you were part of different committees, and so can you share that?
I'm happy to. Well, there's a committee for nominations and board development. What does that mean? Well, nominations is who serves on the board. There are probably people listening to us right now, Maurice, who would be good candidates to be on the CWS board that you may not be aware of. So that committee is about finding those candidates. And I'm proud to say that I found a couple of people in my circle of friends and acquaintances who could serve the board because they brought a skill set that fit in really well with the skill sets of the rest of us on the board at the time. And I have another candidate that's in the hopper right now. So it's that kind of thing with nominations. Board development is how do you help the board to be more knowledgeable itself? How can you give meaningful experiences to the members of the board of directors so they understand what CWS is doing in the world, and then can bring their expertise to help us figure out how to do it better or more widely or more meaningfully. And so we had programs. I was going to say one of my favorite things that I remember from my board service is we had a board meeting in New York City. I'm from a village of fewer than 1,000 people in rural Ohio. This is the very big city. And we all, as a board, went to a grocery store in Harlem. It's like, you have to feed a family. Here's what you got. What are you going to do? And by the way, your money's limited. And I learned a lot from that. So, you know, there were so many experiences. I remember going to Chicago and having a group of people who were migrants who wanted to come into the United States, who we were helping to settle in the United States through our network of churches and caring people to help them become established and be comfortable and to have a life here. So have I answered your question, Maurice?
Yeah, no, you did. And
Okay.
thanks for reminding me about that event that we did together in New York. It was called the Holy Meal. The board was asked to cook a nutritious meal with a chef, and we had a board member at that time who had a lot of knowledge about food and nutrition as well. So she did a Jess Fenso of Johns Hopkins, who did a presentation on that, and we had a singer who helped to still the musical hunger, and then we had a theology background as well, and a conversation about that. So yeah, thanks for reminding me, because I enjoyed that as well. Going back to your contributions to the board, Lenann, is your background is marketing and how do you talk with people about your product and what you are about. I think you also played an instrumental role in something that we call the pitch deck, and how you talk. So can you give some quick tips about some of the listeners that support Church World Service, and how they can help to increase the number of participants or make other people more curious about the organizations? Are there some tips there? I know I surprised you by this maybe. Do you have some tips? Because I always enjoy that, listening to you and getting some new insights.
Well, of course, the tips are very simple. We live in a world in which people have very short attention spans, very short. So you cannot explain something because people will become bored probably in the first 3 seconds. So we have to say something that's impactful, powerful, and provocative, but short. The phrase that I used earlier, walk the talk. Most of us say, I feel bad that there are hungry people here in our own country. I feel bad there are hungry people overseas. It's a terrible thing. Okay, wonderful. What are we going to do about it? Now, there are a lot of charities that will say, well, we'd be happy to take your money and turn it into food for hungry people. That's fine. But I don't know all of these charities, and I don't know how well they operate. Now, we have some things that are things like Charity Navigator that help us to know whether charities are doing what they say they're going to do. And those things are worth looking at. What I learned about Church World Service is that having done this since 1946 or 7, I mean, the end of the World War II period, they have done it a long time, learned all the lessons, and now are employing those lessons. So the tip I would say is don't reinvent the wheel. If you have a wheel, use the wheel. And at least in my personal giving, I know that Church World Service will stretch every dollar to help the most people who are hungry or who are displaced. So short messages that are powerful and provocative, like walk the talk, like keeping it simple. I have a couple right here that I brought forward. Oh, one of my favorite. What will our children see that we did? Now, the circumstances in the world are what they are. We all have an idea about the status of, for example, migrating people who've left their country, not because they want to, but because they have to. And I shouldn't even say left their country, left their home area because of oppression and trouble. Can those people be helped? Well, yes. And I want to be able to say to my daughter, Lindsay, I didn't do much, but I was able to support an organization that was helping those people who are migrating.
I would like to talk with you about the 75 years of Church World Service. When the organization was celebrating 50 years, and I'm showing for the listeners who cannot see what I'm showing you is a book that was made on 50 years of Church World Service. And the title was 50 Years of Help and Hope. Now, Lenann, if you would be asked to come up with a title for if we would publish a book about 75 years, and we are not, because we are publishing a series of podcasts about this. But what would be some of the keywords that you would be using for the title of such a book?
Well, Maurice, I actually thought help and hope were two great words. I mean, I wasn't part of that decision-making process. That's before my time, but I thought they were good words. And when I had to think about that question, I wrote 75 years of help and hope, learning and love. And so I put the emphasis, and maybe CWS doesn't, but I do, on the learning. I think these are very complex problems that CWS grapples with every single day. And there's learning to be had. And, I think that is what makes CWS different for me. Not to say that CWS is the only charity that's been around a long time, but it's been focused on these same issues all of this time. So learning, and then the underlying love, because, a lot of times we stay away from the word love, but to me, it is a way of being in the world that allows people to come along, to step up. The other thing, last thing about CWS is they're not fixing stuff for people. They're helping people get stuff fixed. And that's an important distinction because, well, give a man a fish and he eats for a day, and teach a man to fish and he eats for a lifetime. That is that principle come to life, helping people to get these things done for themselves so that they can carry on after the involvement of CWS, or when CWS's limited resources are turned to other crises, that people have something to move forward with. So I think that's a beautiful thing. And that to me is living love.
Going to piggyback a little bit on that learning and growing and evolving. When I'm asked to describe Church World Service, I often say it was established in 1946 as a Christian U.S. organization trying to work ecumenically because together we can do more than apart. But I think it's slowly evolved into an organization that is more global and more interfaith. If you hear me say that, would you agree with me? And if so, yes. And if you don't agree, which is perfectly fine, why, can you explain that as well then?
Yeah, I think it definitely has evolved to a more global focus. And I will say, as a Christian person myself, that just even using the word Christian can, to some extent, polarize people. And I don't want to do that. If I say I'm living my faith by helping others, oh, that's fine. Do I need to say I'm living my Christian faith, or I'm living my Lutheran faith, or I don't feel a need for those labels. I remember on one occasion having a chance with CWS people to visit a mosque and in New York City and be with the imam of that mosque in New York City near Ground Zero and everything that happened on 9/11. And I wanted to learn from that man. I wanted to learn. I remember bringing in a Jewish member of my personal circle of friends and acquaintances and professional people to join our board, to bring that perspective among many other skills that he brought to the table. So I think it's appropriate that we not limit ourselves. And of course, this was founded as a Christian organization. There are many Christian people involved with and donating to CWS. But I would say to those who do not happen to be Christian people, this is a way to do good in the world, regardless of the faith structure that you have underlying your own life, if you have one. So, I know many people who are doing good works. They may not do that in the context of any faith. If that's their frame, I think they can still do good work in the world through an organization like CWS.
Lenann, I mean, you are aware that the last couple of years, Church World Service has had a lot of discussions around, how can we link ourselves in a better way with the younger generation, because our supporters are getting older. And as a result, we also had a lot of discussions around the brand. And I think the 75 years of Church World Service is also a moment where you look back and also look forward. Now, I would like to discuss one tiny aspect of the branding, because it's much more complex than only the name, because I would like to talk about the name. Yeah, I mean, that organization has had discussions about a possible name change, and that has to do with that would maybe help to reach out in a better way to the younger generation. So what is your opinion about that? If Church World Service would decide to change the name, and again, listeners, I'm nothing has been decided at all. This is part of the discussion. So, but I asked this question because I think it's interesting to hear from board members, ex-board members, and supporters about what their opinion is about this. So, Lenann.
Well, when I talk about CWS, I often say CWS. I'm not ashamed of the fact that the organization is Church World Service. That's the name of the organization, or at least that's how it stands today. But saying CWSglobal.org is easy, because that helps me say to people, don't take my word for it. Go to this website, cwsglobal.org, and check it out. See what you think. And then I'm happy to have a conversation with you about it. But I think that's a short way of saying it. But it also does kind of get us away from the number of people who hear the word church and turn away on the basis of the fact that it's church. So I don't want to lose those people. I believe there are many good-hearted, caring, loving people who don't happen to go to a Christian church or perhaps any church at all. Or maybe what I would call a church for them is a mosque or a synagogue or what have you. So I don't want people to turn away from this organization on the basis of the first word out of our mouth being church. At the same time, I am not ashamed that this came out of churches. And as a person who's been involved with the organization for over a decade now, I would say this. When I hear that CWS is one of only 9 organizations authorized to help resettle refugees in the United States or migrants in the United States, and by the way, less than 1% of migrants come to the United States. It's a very, very tiny percentage. But when I think, how do these folks get integrated into American society? And I say, well, we have a network of people, many of whom are associated with churches, who help in that process of transitioning to having a reasonable life in the US. Then I think, gee, that makes sense. That's a way for churches to be active in their communities and help folks. So I think that is a good thing. But then again, I'm a Christian person. And I am really aware there are a lot of people who do not identify as Christian. So the bottom line for me, I've been saying CWS Global or cwsglobal.org for years now, and that works for me. If people want to know the background, happy to share it.
Lenann, as you know, I love music, and that's why I always have a music-related question. If you have to come up with a song or a piece of music that, from your point of view, represents what CWS is all about, is there a song or a piece of music that you can share with us?
Like you, I am a music lover, and I am a musician. I'm a keyboardist, and I love to sing. And I tried to think about music in terms of CWS. And the first thing that came to my mind is a kind of a country tune called You Don't Love God If You Don't Love Your Neighbor. And when people have spoken to me about the fact that I'm a Stephen minister, which is a Christian role, and they say, well, why are you so out there with your Christianity? My answer is, well, what do you say as being my Christianity? I am a person who is in the world trying to be a loving, caring, supportive person of those around me. And with regard to CWS, to people who are in need around the world. So for me, my Christianity comes down to a faith piece and a love piece that is exemplified by you don't love God if you don't love your neighbor. So check it out. I would say
I will check it out. Yeah, I think when you kind of look back at your time with CWS, which is not finished because it has only taken a different shape and form. But is there an anecdote or a memory or something that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, I've shared a few along the way.
You absolutely did, yeah.
I guess my biggest memory, and it's several memories, because we as a board would meet together pre-pandemic 3 times a year. And I would walk in, and from the moment I saw James, the audiovisual professional, who was always the first person, it seems like, I saw when I arrived at a board meeting, I was greeted, I was hugged, I was appreciated. We would sit in a big U shape, about 19 members of the board, depending on when, give or take one or two. And I would look across at all these people who individually were so talented and capable, but who would take a chunk of time out of their lives. And, it's travel, it's, some hotel somewhere, running around. And just give that to this organization. We were not paid for that. We did that because we wanted to be part of it. And the group that they assembled, that the CWS organization was able to assemble for its board, was consistently high level, consistently capable, consistently caring, and just as sincere as they can be. And I think sincerity is more rare now. I think we're suspicious when we see people, they're a goody, they're doing whatever they're doing, what's in it for them. And these people were doing it out of the kindness of their hearts and as an expression of their faith in many cases. And to me, that is a rare thing in the world now. There are so many people who are not sincere. And, I don't know, I watch podcasts, I watch, videos online, and I look at the people on there and I say, could you look into that screen and say, this is really what you mean, or is this just what you're trying to do to manipulate me? And I think some of them couldn't really look in the camera and say that, but every single member of that CWS board that I interacted with could say that. They were very committed, caring, and loving people. And I think the world needs more of such people.
My last question for you, Lenann, is there any wish or anything that you would like to say to Church World Service?
I would say I wish you strength. I think that those of us who have, come before, are very much with you. I mean, we're an asset on whose shoulders you stand, on whose shoulders the board of today stands. And I'm standing on the shoulders of a number of people who served before me. And it's a large group of people who care and who want to see the best for this organization. Just never forget about that. It's very interesting to look at, what are our fundraising numbers? How are we doing in bringing in the money that supports this very worthwhile work? And fundraising goes up and down, and it's something that we do ongoing. If people listening to this want to make a difference today, go to cwsglobal.org, make a donation. You can do something right now. But it's something that is such history, such power, that strength, I hope, flows into the people who are going forward today, including yourself, Maurice, to know that what you're doing is supported, and it's supported in a million ways and in a million hearts.
Great. Thank you so much, Lenann. As I said, for everything that you did and are still doing, and for also who you are. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Do you see you? Do you see me?
Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you want to know more about Church World Service, please check out cwsglobal.org. Thank you.